Hello, and welcome to the Cybersecurity Simulation Portal final presentation for SANG 691, summer of 2016. Group members in the project were myself, David Krovich, Brian Schaefer, and Kevin Knopp. So what is CSSP? It is meant to be a cloud-based teaching aid, which allows a teacher to assign cloud instances to students, and then start and stop these instances from a web interface. Students will then use this web interface to get information about cloud instances that are assigned to them. And they can use this information to connect to these instances. And then AWS security groups are put in place to control access to and from the instances and to only allow students that are assigned to specific instances to connect to those instances. CSSP consists of a bunch of components. It is a Ruby on Rails application. There's also some command line Ruby scripts that were written using the AWS SDK. And there are some Ansible playbooks to help with provisioning and initial setup of the application. CSSP has some requirements for AWS in order to be used. A VPC must be configured for CSSP. A subnet must be configured for CSSP, a security group must be configured for CSSP, and then an AMI image must be created from which to launch new CSSP instances from. The CSSP Ruby on Rails application itself, it's based on Ubuntu 14.04, uses Ruby 1.9 and Rails 4.0. Uses SQLite 3 database for the backend, Devise Gem for authentication, and RSpec Capybara for testing. Now, to start using the application, first of all, you need to set it up. And you need to create an instance in AWS to actually host the Ruby on Rails application. So we will jump to the EC2 management console. And here you see a bunch of terminated instances from a previous demo. So we're going to launch a new instance. And we're going to use an AMI that's already been previously created. We have to associate an IAM role, and this enables this instance to access the Amazon API. So we name the instance the app server since it will be hosting the app, and we then associate it with the existing security group we've already created. And then we launch the instance. I've already have SSH keys set up and embedded in this AMI, so I'm going to proceed without a key pair. Okay, and the instance is then launching, and we will pause here while that's happening. And welcome back. So as you can see, the instance is now up and running. So let's see what's next. So the next step is to connect to the instance via SSH. I will launch a new terminal and resize it for readability. The IP address for the instance we can get here. And then we connect to this cloud instance in AWS. And now we've connected to the system. We have to install Git and Ansible in order to git clone our repository and configure the machine the rest of the way. The next step is to git clone the CSSP repository. The repository is hosted on GitHub. It's currently a private repository though. Now, with the repository cloned, the next step is to move towards Ansible. And there's a little bit of pre-Ansible configuration we have to do. We have to configure it to understand the localhost target. So in our Ansible subdirectory, we have a hosts file, which we copy into place where Ansible expects it to be. Now with Ansible configured, we can use the provided playbook to provision the AWS instance as a Ruby on Rails server. So the Ansible scripts are currently running, and they will make sure the system is updated with all the latest packages, and then do a dist upgrade, and then install any necessary configurations to enable the server for Ruby on Rails. And we will let this run and return after it is finished. And welcome back. As you can see, the Ansible configuration has finished, and the instance should now be configured to host Ruby on Rails applications. So the next step is to actually stand up the Ruby on Rails application. This is also located in the Git repository. The first step is to do a bundle install to make sure all the necessary gems and dependencies are installed for the application. And the next step is to run a rake dbmigrate to initialize the database and tables. And then start up the Rails application. And this is running in development mode, so we're using WebRick, which comes with Rails. Okay, and the application is running on port 3000. So we go to our web browser, and then we have to find the IP address again. And then browse to port 3000 on that IP address. And this will then launch our Ruby on Rails application, which recently has a nice new Twitter Bootstrap interface. So it's actually starting to look like a professional application. Now, before I actually log into CSSP, I want to show you some of the state of the AWS before things start getting changed. So the management console, we have currently one running instance, and we currently have two security groups, a default one and then a default CSSP security group. Okay, so now we're actually going to start using the application. So first thing I'll do is create a blue team user and then show briefly the blue team interface. Okay, so the blue team user logs in and has a blue team's control, but that's all they see, and then they can go to the home screen and they can log out. And we'll also create an admin user. So an admin user gains full access to the application. So there's blue team controls, there's account management controls, there's instance association, which is where an instance would be associated to a user, and then managing of instances. So we'll go ahead and click on Manage Instances. And you can see the app server itself is running here. So this is the instance that is running the CSSP application itself. So now we have an admin or a teacher use case. And this use case would be they want to create an instance and then associate that instance with a blue team member. This process uses a combination of command line scripts and the web interface. So we've written 4 currently command line Ruby scripts right now. There's a script to list instances, start an instance, stop an instance, and then also create a new instance from an AMI image. So we'll open another terminal window. And again, connect to our app server. And then in our scripts directory, we can run our list instances script, which will show currently the same view that the web application is showing. And then we can also create a new instance using a script. So we're going ahead and do that. So this will create a new instance from the existing AMI image. We list instances. We now see a new instance that is starting up in pending state. If we look in our web application and refresh, we see a new instance has appeared. We now want to associate this new instance with the blue team user so they can log into CSSP and use that instance. So we go to our instance association page. We do a new instance mapping. We enter the instance ID and we enter the email of the user we want to associate it with. This then creates a link. So it now links this instance ID with this blue team user. So we can, from the admin interface, we can also manage the instance. So we see that it's currently running. If we want it to, we could start or stop the instance from here. Currently it's running, which is what we want. So at this point, we will log out of the system and then show the blue team use case. So now that the association has been created, the blue team members can log into CSSP. He can visit blue team controls and see the instance information, and then using that information should be able to SSH and connect to that instance. Okay, so the blue team member visits blue team controls, and you can see an instance is associated with that person. They can show details about that instance. Now, another thing to note is security groups. So we'll go back to the EC2 management console to display this. So when we refresh now, we see a second instance has been created and is running. If we look at our security groups, we see a new security group has been created for blue team. That security group is populated with connect information for the user. And then that security group is also associated with that user. Sorry, with that instance, as you can see here. So there's a default CSSP security group and then a blue team security group also associated with that instance. So the blue team member gets the public IP address of the instance they are assigned. They then open a terminal window. And I'll do this in Ocean for blue. So we come over here, we grab the IP address. And then that user, this would simulate the blue user or the student user connecting to the resource now. Also, something that's not shown here is that key management, SSH key management, would have to have been dealt with. So at this point, it's assumed the user, the blue team user, already has the appropriate SSH keys for CSSP. So now the student user is connected to a fully functioning Ubuntu 14.04 machine. Also, because of the security groups, that's the only person that should be able to connect to this instance is the blue user and, of course, the admin. So, at the end of the class, we'll go back to, so we'll log out for the blue person, and we will go back to the admin interface. We go to manage instances. Class is over, so we want to shut down the instances. So here's the blue users logged in. We find their instance. We go to manage the instance, and then we stop the instance. And as you can see here, the blue user gets kicked off, the machine shuts down, and they can no longer connect to that machine. You can also see the state of the instance is moving towards stopping. Now we've observed the blue team user has been kicked off, and so then the last step would be the admin actually would use CSSP to shut down itself. So this is the instance for CSSP itself, and the instructor is done and would just stop this instance. Which of course now it's shut down, so the web application stops working. So future work for this project is to add Google OAuth 2 for authentication, and then get rid of the sign up feature altogether and have all authentication be using Google as a backend. There are numerous interface improvements that need to be made, and hopefully soon there will be some live testing. As of now, CSSP has only existed in development. So hopefully that will change soon, and the application will grow and improve from there.